One of the first things we heard that was a challenge was access to technical assistance and education. With thousands of incubators and accelerators across the U.S., it can be incredibly overwhelming for entrepreneurs to know where to go to start and scale their business.
Some of the barriers to entry of entrepreneurship that I've encountered are just the barriers to knowledge, like knowing where to begin, knowing what an LLC is and how to file for a patent and what's a provisional patent versus a regular patent. It's a lot of things that if you've never gone to business school or gotten an MBA, you just don't know.
But it's difficult if you don't know how to make a demo, or if you don't know how to use kind of low-code tools or, design tools like Figma, or if you don't have the capital to hire a contractor. These are barriers that stand in your way of going the next, of taking the next step.
I think the most successful entrepreneurs probably talk to those who failed, because I want to know where you messed up at, but I also want to know where you were successful at, because these are areas that can help me out.
So I think being able to have other entrepreneurs, other founders who are further than you in the journey and having access to them, things like that are invaluable.
As a woman entrepreneur, there are definitely some barriers. Understanding kind of how you're going to scale a business is a different ballgame. And I don't know that there's been a ton of support for small business owners like that.
We all need the education, because even just the small things of either starting a nonprofit or starting an LLC, most people don't know where to go. Understanding a pitch deck. What does a pitch deck consist of? What are you asking for? Why do you need the money? We all need those resources to be able to understand what it is that we're building and what it is that we're trying to do.
We have an idea, but how do we bring it to fruition? And that really looks like a lot of different things. It can look like resources, it could look financial, maybe you need money and support, grants, but also having mentors, having good people that genuinely know what you're trying to do and giving you advice and giving you support, and having access to those resources is so critical. That to me is few and far between. And so there's so much power and so much potential for what could be accomplished if there was more of an infrastructure.
People don't necessarily see themselves as entrepreneurs and haven't necessarily gotten the entrepreneurial training. I mean, the great news is you go to high schools, you go to many colleges and universities, you're going to find an entrepreneurship program. The downside is that very often those things are teaching people how to pitch, but they aren't necessarily teaching them many of the modern methods.
We see that a lot with women and people of color in the heartland, especially, is this access to not just networks, but mentorship and kind of that social capital. How do you think we overcome that?
So there are more organizations that are working together to bring capital, knowledge, and networks together, but these things take a lot of time. Some of the things that I'd love to see is just earlier access and exposure. So when you think about getting access to STEM resources in schools, learning to code earlier.
You're talking about a modern economy, no-code, low-code tools, generative AI, and business models that are completely new, unheard of even 5 and 10 years ago. So the people who are giving advice and help to entrepreneurs, they need to know this stuff. They need to be experts at this stuff. And we need to think about the frameworks that we're using and we're teaching entrepreneurs through this modern lens.
I think that's another area where state government can be involved, is making sure that there's a good relationship between the public and private sector, working with nonprofits, and frankly, creating mentorship programs, writing legislation at state capitals that really enforces and champions mentorship programs. Could be grants, could be incentives that we can create at a state level to make it easier and really, give people one less excuse to create that business or create that mentorship program that's going to help young entrepreneurs in any state. There is a national narrative, thankfully, going on when it comes to skilled labor and closing a skills gap. In Oklahoma, we have our Oklahoma Career Tech system that has entrepreneurship programs embedded into many career tech centers across the state of Oklahoma. You've got juniors and seniors in Oklahoma today that can go down the street to one of our career tech centers when they are in high school to learn about entrepreneurship programs, to learn from those teachers and mentors about what it means to be an entrepreneur, to scale businesses so that when they graduate from high school, they may want to go to college, and that's great. They may want to go immediately into the workforce or immediately create and start a business. There will be businesses and ideas that will be birthed at our career tech centers.
Yeah, from the technical side of things, I think it's, at the very core, it's, access to the internet and tools, and also fundamentally education. So, exposing kids at a very early age to different tools and techniques, and obviously just the STEM approach to education. But even workforce development and retraining people on how to use new tools, teach kids, to learn how to use AI to focus on other things or other problems instead of, pursuing a career path that may not be there in the next 10 years.
What do you think the role that government, both big and small, can play in helping around workforce and helping around entrepreneurship, really that talent development pipeline?
We are at an inflection point, I think, with our workforce development system. And I do see some hopeful signs there as well that we might be able to get some kind of reforms to that system that would really be helpful. And this is an area, I think, where we've got a lot that we can do. Guidance counseling in high schools and community colleges and four-year colleges and universities. Young people at every stage have a lot less information than they need in order to make effective decisions, right? And they need mentors, and they need counselors who can come alongside them to help them explore themselves. Like, what am I made for? What am I built for? What's my thing to give to the world?
We hope that you will take these lessons from across the heartland and carefully consider what will work in your own communities to increase access to technical assistance and mentorship.